Hey fam, wanted to get into a little Black Monday season 1 episode 8 review. So basically this one starts off, it's flashing back to 1968, and whenever they do the flashback on this one, it's in black and white. So Mo is in the scene basically, and he's walking down the street and he's got black leather jacket on. Of course, his afro's bigger at that time, but everybody in his vicinity is dressed the same with the black leather jackets and the big afros, and I'm here for it, y'all. Basically, this is the Black Panthers movement that he's involved with. And basically, his part in the movement is at this particular point, they're having a gathering and he's providing food for the neighborhood. This is something that the Black Panthers did regularly. Just for all those naysayers who try to throw shade at the Black Panthers, they were a positive, protective force in the Black community. And if you don't know, you better do some research. Okay. So anyway, now we're switching back to the present. And if you remember on the end of the last episode, Tiff, Blair's fiance, had been kidnapped, and he is freaked out and he's gone over to Don's house. And Don opens up the door and he's walking in and he's starting to tell her what happened to Tiff, but Don actually has the news playing in the background, and they're basically saying that Tiff has been kidnapped. The heir of the Georgina empire has been kidnapped. And as soon as they're done saying that, they go on to say, the anchor says, basically, Princess Diana shook hands with an AIDS patient without a glove on. This is the 80s, y'all, and you know that freaked them out because they didn't know shit about shit. All right? So Dawn's freaked out, and she's like, well, what's going to happen? And Blair's like, she's probably going to die. And she's like, what? No. And he's like, no, I meant Princess Diana. I'm like, you know how they got this raunchy comedy going on this show. I love it. So basically, Tiff's being held for ransom. Turns out that the people have contacted her parents. And let me see. Blair is, he's like, the police have no leads. He's talking to Tiff, telling her this. And he's like, could Mo have done this? And she is like, no way, Mo would not do that. I mean, he's crazy, but he is not that crazy. And Blair's like, he kidnapped me yesterday. Well, he did, but that was that was a funny thing. Anyway, Don is like, no, Mo would not do that. And then he goes on to say that Mo told me about the Georgina play. And Don is like, come again? And he's like, the Georgina play? And he's looking at her and she's looking at him like she has no idea what's going on. Basically, she plays dumb. And he's like so relieved that she has no idea about this because he doesn't want to believe someone he's that close to has anything to do with this crap that Mo has going on against him. So basically, she's... Oh, he then asked her, well, where's Spence at? And she's like, well, since I asked for a divorce last night, he's gone. And he's like, oh my gosh, are you serious? He's like, you asked for a divorce? And she's like, yeah. And you can tell the chemistry between Blair and Don because he's genuinely concerned about her. Like, he gives a fuck. And he'd really like to get into it and be there for her. And he says this basically, he's like, but I got this whole Tiff thing going on and I don't know what to do. And he's like, I would tell the cops about the whole Georgina play thing. He's like, but there's no way that I can tell them that. And they're not going to believe that I didn't know what was going on and that I don't have anything to do with her kidnapping. And Don's like, you know what? I'm going to take care of this. Basically, I just need you to stall the police. I need to figure out what's going on here. So buy me some time by stalling them. Okay. So from there, let's see. Blair is still kind of freaking out about Tiff being gone. He's breaking down because he doesn't know if she's safe. He doesn't, she could be dead. And Dawn is trying to calm him down. And she basically tells him that Calvin Klein's daughter, they got her back in 9 hours. Apparently back in the 80s, the Calvin Klein's empire, their heir was kidnapped and held for 9 hours, and I guess they got her back. But anyway, Don's like, can't you hold it together for 9 hours? Just 9 hours. And he's like, okay, I guess I can. He's like, I don't want to marry her, but basically I don't want her murdered, brutally murdered, cut into chunks either. And she's like, they will find the guys that did this. They'll find the guys that did this. And she's like, and when they do, it will not be Mo. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, 100%. I promise it's not Mo. In the next scene, Dawn is kicking open Mo's front doors. Okay. I mean, she takes the kid and she's like, what did you do? And she's coming in screaming, Mo, Tiff. She's looking around because she 100% now thinks that Mo kidnapped Tiff. And the place is empty, but what she does see is on the coffee table in the living room, there's a lit cigarette. So whoever was there just left. All right. Let me see. So then they're flashing back to 68 where Mo is there. And on the street, there's a little gathering of Black Panther people, and this beautiful sister walks up, and she's loud. She's talking shit basically, but she's not from there. She announces to them basically, and she is talking to them, letting them know she's from Baltimore. Okay, apparently they're in New York. She's from Baltimore. The leader ain't feeling the violence path, basically. When she's talking, she's portraying sort of a, I'm done with the bullshit. I'm ready to get as violent as whatever's coming at us. Lingo. That's, hell, a lot of people go there. Once you get infuriated with something long enough, you're done with the bullshit and you're ready to act. I'm not mad at her, okay? So the leader is basically not feeling what she's talking about, and he pulls Mo aside, and he's like, basically, you need to keep an eye on her. You know, she can get us, all of us, herself into trouble. I need you to keep an eye on her. And Mo is checking her out because she's fine. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll watch her. All right, so Mo goes up to her, and she introduces herself as Connie, and Mo introduces himself to her, and she gives Mo her phone number. All right. And then we're switching back to the current, and Blair is with Tiff's parents, and they're being questioned by the detective there at Blair's place. And he brings up, the detective brings up to Blair that he grew up in a trailer, and that his mom still was living in a trailer that she literally grew out of. And basically they had to cut her out of this trailer because she became so morbidly obese. That was the only way to get her out of the place. And Blair is like, yeah, I grew up in a trailer. And he's like, and I make a lot of money now, and I bought my mother a house, and that's where she lives at. Basically, immediately, that detective is coming at Blair in an accusatory capacity, basically saying, you did this, you have something to do with Tiff's disappearance. All right. So Blair's denying. So the cop says it's normally a partner or family member or someone they owe money to that tends to do something like this. And when he shows up there, they also show the ransom note that the parents had received from whoever took Tiff, basically. You know how they used to cut the letters out of the newspaper and paste them on paper. That's what they show up with, and they show it on the screen there. Her dad is like, don't we have any clues other than bitch boy here? Yes, Tiff's dad talks shit about Blair, just like Tiff does. It's a family thing. According, apparently, to them, Blair is a punchline. It's a damn shame. The cop basically probes on, and he's still asking, do you guys owe anybody any large amount of money? And everyone's thinking, and they're like, no. And Blair accidentally blurts out Mo. And the cop is like, what did you say? And he's like, no. I said, no, I don't know anyone any money. All right. So then we're switching back to 68, Mo with the girl. And basically they're chilling on a car. They're sitting on top of the hood of a car. They look like they're in a park, basically. And she's smoking a joint. She's getting high. And she offers Mo some. And he's like, nah. He says the party has policy against violence and drugs, basically. And she's like, I'm not offering the party. I'm offering you, Roland. Apparently back then, that was the name that Mo went by. I think it's his real name, Roland. And he's like, I'm cool, basically telling her no. And she's like, apparently you're not, okay? She's like, you should try opening your mind, basically. And he agrees. And I must say, through my own personal experience, That's how everybody gets you to get high the first time. Open your mind, let it take you somewhere. And honestly, it does. Opens you up, relaxes you, lets you think about things in a way maybe that you didn't before, or just in a more chill environment. So basically they're getting high together and they end up kissing, and the girl's like on top of him doing a little grindage there, and then they flash from them to the present. And at this point, Tiff has been missing for 7 hours. And basically Dawn is gone to their job. She's gone to their office in the stock market building, and she shows up at the office, and when she walks in, she is disgusted because the guy, Keith, and the two other coworkers there, she walks in and she's like, are you, let me get this right. She's like, are you in a jerk circle again? A circle jerk again? And they're like, we're not in a circle. We're in a triangle. We're not gay. These fools was jerking it off in the office, okay? I mean, nobody else is there. And yeah, it's not business time, but really? Damn, just nasty. Okay, so basically they state that they started in a dick measuring contest. Literally, this is what they're... Y'all know these guys are nasty as fuck. Okay, basically that led to a sword fighting contest. I'm going to act like that didn't happen, okay? And that sword fighting contest led to a pissing contest. And I do mean that on the table in front of all of them is jars that are halfway filled with piss. These are some nasty... Okay, so she cuts them off, and she's like, have you seen Mo? And they're like, yeah, basically. He grabbed something from the office and said he was going upstate. And when they say that, Tiff is like, okay, you can see in her head the look she gives. I know exactly where he went, okay? So then they're back over to where Blair is at. Blair and Tiff's parents, basically the building that they're in where Blair is at, the press is all over outside because the big story broke that the heir of the Georgina empire has been kidnapped. So the press is all over it. Paparazzi, y'all. So mom is sitting there drinking everything under the sun. Mom is loaded, and dad's filling her up because mom's stressed out about Tiff's disappearance. And she's like, basically telling her husband, any press is good press, right? She's just drunk. And the cop takes Blair into the hallway because he wants to speak to him in privacy. And literally when they step out there, he's like, where's Tiff? And he's like, I don't know. And the cop is like, I know you got a side chick. You're mess. And he's like, what are you talking about? Basically, the cop says that I had a fellow cop follow you this morning, and you went over to an African-American woman's house this morning, a hot one, okay? And he says, is that your side piece? And Blair denies. He's like, no, absolutely not. And the cop is like, the rich heir goes missing, and her white trash fiance flies into the arms of his Nubian princess. Blair is like, I wouldn't describe me or her like that. And then here we're flashing back to 68 where Roland's at again. And let me see. The Black Panthers are having a meeting, and they're talking about basically there was an attack on their deacon the night before. And the speaker wants to send a strong message by raising money for the defense. And Connie is sitting right there, and you know my sister ain't having it. She shows complete disappointment, and the leader is standing there looking at her. She's like right in front of him, and he, basically he's like, is there a problem, Sister Connie? And she's like, this is not good enough. She's like, it's time we start fighting fire with firepower, okay? If you're down, I need you to come with me. She's telling all the people in the room, if you're down with what I'm saying, I need you to follow me up out of here. And Roland stands up, and many of the other brothers that are in there stand up. Like half the guys in the place, maybe more than half. All men. They're all following her out. Okay, then we switch back to Mo. Oh, I'm sorry. We're still there. Back to Mo with cop. Oh, I'm sorry, Blair. I wrote this down wrong. We're switching back to present, and Blair's in the hallway talking to the cop. And the parents open the door and step out, and basically they say that the kidnapper has called, and all they basically want is $100,000, basically, and they're relieved. Just $100,000. They got money like that. They want Blair to go to their house, basically, to get a Louis Vuitton bag for the trade. The cops said they needed something big, sturdy enough to put something that could be tracked in it, and they opted for the Louis Vuitton. So they're sending their poor white trash daughter's fiance to the house to pick it up. And when he gets there, I'm sorry. Now we're flashing back to 68 again. The show is literally like this. Here, there. This is how it goes, okay? So back to Connie, and she's leading her Black Panthers. She's in charge of them now, the one she took. And she basically lays out the plan. She wants to kill their governor, Reagan. She wants to kidnap Governor Reagan. Reagan was a governor at that time. And she wants to hold him until all Black Panther 10-point platforms are met. The 10-point platform of the Black Panther. She has a whole plan laid out. Basically, she knows the governor's coming and going, his routine. And she leads them to pick up with them all armed. She leads them to pick him up. Everyone has guns. She basically got them all guns, and they're on their way to go get the governor because they know exactly where they're at, and it's time for the kidnapping. Okay, let's see. Next, over to Dawn, and she's in her car, and she's driving upstate to a cabin. Apparently, Mo owns one that only she knows about. She's looking for Mo there, and when she gets there, she pulls out her gun, not knowing what to expect. You know, with the whole kidnapping going on, there's no way to tell what's going on, and she's coming armed. And I don't blame her. So now they're flashing back over to Blair, who is at the house, Tiff's parents' house, and he ends up wandering into her room. And he sits on the bed, and he's looking at a picture of him and her on the side of the bed. And he looks down, and underneath the table, there's a stack of magazines that are sticking out underneath the table. So he picks them up, and he's going through them, and he's seeing all the cutouts of the magazine. Like that letter, the ransom letter earlier that her parents showed the detective at his house. Yeah, like that. Like her parents made that letter to give to the cop because they pulled off a fake kidnapping to boost their sales. All right. So he's freaking out as he's putting all this together. And then they're flashing back to 68, the Black Panthers who are on their way to get Reagan. And basically it's like 15 of them, including Connie. They're all armed, walk up to the governor, and basically they're like, Governor Reagan, and they're like, stop. And he stops, and he starts turned around, and he basically says to them, not exactly, because it's not Reagan. All right. Let me see. The next thing you know, you see all these FBI agents completely surround all of the Black Panther guys. They have them all get on their knees. They're starting to arrest them. But you notice Connie walking around. She's with the FBI. This bitch who convinced these guys to go rogue and become violent did it because she was working with the FBI who wanted to arrest all these men, which are the exact tactics that government would use on some Black men to get them to go to jail. Anyway, I digress. Okay, when Mo sees this, he is freaking out. He's going off, and he's like, you bitch, you sold us out. And the FBI agents are coming over, and they're beating on him with the gun, and they get him on his knees because they got him in cuffs behind him. And he's like, I can't believe you. He's like, I can't believe you sold us out. And she walks right over to his face and bends down, and she's like, I told you, I got you. I mean, with a smug smile on her face and everything, and walks off just dignified and happy. Oh, bitch. Okay, so Mo ends up in prison, basically, and when he gets there, they show him the cell that they're taking him to. There's a white older guy in the cell next to him, and basically that white older guy is the one from previous episodes who was Mo's mentor, okay? So the one who was in the hospital dying. That's how Mo met him. So from there, we go to Dawn, who showed up at the cabin, and she has to go around the back. And when she gets to the back, she sees Mo. There's a lake outside of the cabin in the back, and he's out on that little, the wooden ramp thing that goes out over the water, the dock, sorry. And he's got a vase that he's dropping ashes out of. And Dawn runs up, and she's freaking out, waving her gun, and she's asking, is that Tiff? Is that Tiff? And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like, are those Tiff's ashes? And he's like, what? And she's like, I'm sorry. Tiff was kidnapped today. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, she was kidnapped. And he's like, you think I kidnapped, killed, and burnt Tiff up today? And she's like, well, I guess that's not possible. No, I don't think you did. And he's basically says, these are the ashes of my friend Ron Zeminski. And Dawn starts, he's, sprinkling the ashes out, and Dawn is getting all in her feelings basically, and she starts singing a Christian hymn because this is basically him saying goodbye to a friend. And Mo turns around and he's like, no. He's like, Ron was Jewish. And she's like, oh, okay, my bad. And so then he goes back to what he's doing, and then Dawn busts out singing a Jewish hymn. And I'm just shocked she knows a Jewish hymn. Like, where did that come from? But anyway, Mo turns around. He's like, no singing. I just want silence. She's like, okay. All right, so then they flash back over to Blair, and Blair takes the magazines back to his apartment. And when he gets there, he asks the cop to come out in the hallway so he can speak to him in private. And he shows him the magazines. He's like, look at this. Do you see this? He's showing him all the cutouts. And he basically explains how Calvin Klein brand took off after his daughter was kidnapped. And he thinks that Tiff's parents are the one who did this. And the cop is like, what? So he leaves Blair in the hallway and goes back into the apartment with Tiff's parents. And they're in there talking, arguing. And then he comes out and he says, the kidnappers called and they've released Tiff. She'll be in a subway and it's all taken care of. And Blair is looking down and this cop is holding a bag. The bag that he brought from the parents' house. The parents paid this fool to shut the fuck up and leave. That's what they did. And it worked. He's leaving. And, okay, so then we go back to Roland. After he served his time in prison for trying to kill Governor Reagan. He's getting out of jail. And he's collecting his stuff. The stuff that you had on the way out. And as he gets out, they gave him Ron's watch at his request. So his mentor that his cell was right next to, gave him a watch. And Mo's like, I can't believe you're keeping him here 14 years for security fraud. 14 years for... Damn. And the cop is like, oh, is that what he told you? And he's like, he's here because he killed his business partner. And Mo's like, fuck them all, whatever. He leaves. All right. So then we're back to Mo and Dawn, present day. And basically they share moments as he tells her Ron was his neighbor from long ago that taught him everything that he knows. And Dawn's like, he didn't teach you everything. And he's like, what do you mean, sex? And she's like, Anyway, so Mo and Dawn end up staying up all night and they're talking and drinking and they're just being like best friends like they have basically throughout a lot of their history. And in the morning, the sun has come up. And Mo shares basically how Tiff's kidnapping made the stock for Georgina shoot through the roof. Okay, so he's been notified their stock has gone up, just like with Calvin Klein's daughter. So Mo's ready to sell. That's what he tells her. And he admits that he told Blair everything about the Georgina stock. And Dawn is like, why did you do that? And Mo is like, I genuinely like the kid. I did. He was He was hoping he would work with them still after knowing that, but basically now Blair hates me. That's what he's saying. And Dawn is like, don't sell the Georgina socks. She's like, I'll save it. And she says Blair called her and told her that Tiff's parents were the ones who actually had her kidnapped. And that Blair wasn't going to marry Tiff because he's in love with me. That's what Dawn is telling Mo. And Mo's like, what? Like laughing, like, ha, poor little sucker. And Mo was like, you know how to get out of, wait. After she says that, and Mo does his little freak out, she says, and I'm falling for him too. And immediately you can see Mo's whole demeanor change. And he puts his cigarette out and he's like, you know how to get out of here, right? And he stands up and he goes in that cabin and he closed the doors and left her ass outside. So Mo's done. He's highly pissed because obviously the girl that he loves is moving on. And that's the end of the episode. Thanks for watching. If you like my video, hit the like button, become a subscriber. Bye.